Hi, I can't sleep. It is 4:41 in the morning and I have insomnia. So, welcome to my life. I kind of just feel like in this moment maybe it is productive to use my channel to explore some of my own thoughts, ramble a little bit, and share some of the things that uh keep me thinking, keep me awake at night, whatever. Um we'll see. But yeah, hope everyone's doing well. Not sure how much I'm gonna do on this channel Pokemon wise, but if you like some of these just like random talks, let me know and I'll do a little more of them. I got my nose pierced. You can see that there. It's still healing, which is why it is a little dark right now. It's a light jewel, but it is a little bit of blood, so that's gonna heal. But I did get that, which feels very cool. Weird things are going on in my life right now. The biggest one being that the London stuff in terms of getting there to grad school is very difficult because the school that I got into is messing up a bunch of logistical stuff, and they're like, we're going to change it. And then another day rolls by and they don't do anything about it. I keep calling them and they're basically just like, we'll get to it when we get to it. And it's so frustrating because I can't start my visa process until they start fixing the things that they created, the problems that they made in their filing system or whatever. So it's making me worried that I won't get a visa on time. And, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do if I don't. Because I never really anticipated needing a backup plan necessarily. So getting a little bit scared, but I'm going to pull through. But it brings up a larger issue that's been on my mind lately, which is the overwhelming fear that exists for myself as a trans person in the country right now. That is obviously very, very real based on the politics that, have been deployed by right-wing parties as of late, which I'll get into. So I know this isn't very typical content on the channel. If you're just here for games, then I totally understand. But, I'm also a trans person and I don't have a ton of mediums to speak my mind. So I hope that you can, especially if you're a cis person who is not necessarily following the issues that are going on right now, take the time to just sort of hear what's going on, be an ally, and internalize what others might be going through and maybe where you could play a part. But obviously for the past year and a half, even longer, right-wing conservative parties have used trans people as a scapegoat to detract from a lot of the evils that they do. Terrible economic policies, warmongering, private health care, all of these things that are pretty much, common in European countries that, put America 50 years behind, other European countries because, Republican ideology, right-wingers in the US are far more right than right-wingers in a lot of other similarly developed countries, which, isn't very good because it means we're stuck in a society without free healthcare. We're stuck in a society where guns are, legal to the extent that they are, where all of this terrible stuff is happening. And instead of fighting those issues head on, Republican lawmakers use fear tactics to divert and detract from, what they're really doing and create issues that instill fear and, thus political power into their base. An example of this being critical race theory was not a very common terminology until, a conservative think tank turned around and said, hey, if we just tell everyone that critical race theory is scary and that the Democrats support it, or that left-wing people support it, or that progressives support it, then people are going to start siding with us because we're anti-critical race theory. So they make issues up to oppose, which is, their political tactic that is very bad because it creates actual real-world effects on people for critical race theory and all those conversations. It obviously has an adverse effect on educators broadly, Black educators, Black people in general. Obviously a focus on that can't not be separated from a recent mass shooting that happened here in the States. Not the Texas one, but the one prior. I forget what state it was in, but that was done by a young individual who was solely trying to target Black people. Similarly, they are deploying similar strats now, as they have been, but it's been ramped up lately for trans people. And the idea that there are trans people competing against people in sports, and there's trans people who are entering bathrooms and being pedophilic, like all of these made up issues that either don't exist, or if they have existed, exist in very, very singular cases. Just a big smokescreen. I bring this up because it speaks to the broader thing that, I fear, which is anti-trans violence and the tangible effect that rhetoric and hate speech and disinformation and using an identity group as a political tool to instill fear into a certain group of people, that can culminate in one person who is so far in that rabbit hole to take action or lash out. There's people in my life who are close to me who I know are following conservative media sources that I fear every day. Will they decide to do something about it? Whatever that is, I don't know. It's been a long time since, the Orlando shooting, which was a shooting that happened many, many years ago in a gay nightclub. And I, before COVID started happening, was definitely getting into the clubbing scene, the nightlife scene. I just can't. I want to, but I can't do it anymore because I have terrifying fears that someone's just going to come in, I mean, AR-15s and all these guns are legal here in the States. There's already been, one mass shooting targeted towards Black people. Why not trans people? There's targeted toward kids all the time. It's just, again, one of those things where you never know, and it's much more increasingly likely that things like this can happen. Obviously, a lot of what I'm talking about right now is just very much just from the heart. I think one main catalyst for a lot of these thoughts that I've been having this late has to do with a recent documentary that came out called What is a Woman, by someone named Matt Walsh, who from what I understand, is someone who worked for Ben Shapiro, if you all know who that is, or with him. I have no idea. He's a master manipulator when it comes to manipulating a story or manipulating an issue or making something that's not an issue an issue. Which is this, which is the idea that trans people are pedophiles or, need to be stopped or whatever. So when the video came out, he made this tweet, which got, a significant amount of traction. It was trending on Twitter. I remember being in call with my friend Marcus and freaking out about this live, which was not fun. He talks about how he's going to join forces to bring down gender ideology. I will work with any ally in the fight to destroy it. Like, what does that mean? What's the end point to that? I'm not even speaking from the perspective of someone who wants to, create some kind of push back against this, as much as I just want to, live my life. You know what I mean? That's all trans people want to do. That's all I want to do. I just want to live a happy life. I've been through a lot of shit making the decisions that I've made. I don't need you to try and interfere in my own life or inspire half the country who will follow anything that conservative media propagates, feeling similarly towards me, increasing the risk of a hate crime or anything like that. Of course, this doubles down, triples down, and has even worse effects on trans people of color, disabled trans people, etc. I'm probably one of the more privileged class of trans people in the sense that I'm white and decently well off, and I'm still having terrifying fears about this, so I can't even imagine what other people go through. But this is a thing, and it translates into actual effects on trans issues and actual legislation. This video comes out, trends on Twitter, becomes an even bigger political wedge issue that, again, is completely made up by conservative think tanks to generate fear and detract from bigger conservative issues. Matt Walsh saying here, transitioning should be illegal in general, which is something that certain countries in the world do that we would call them horrible for, and here's this guy advocating for them. The essential banning of transitioning or being trans. To even fathom that being illegal is insane to me, because it would literally mean I would have to escape the country without being prosecuted. Obviously, this wouldn't happen. At least it wouldn't happen anytime soon with who's around, but just the fact that people think this should be okay is crazy to me. As much, especially as Republicans love freedom and everything like that, the fact that one of their biggest spokesperson for this issue is basically no, screw the libertarian approach, we are going to literally force people away from transitioning, and that's good. That's insane to me. I can't even prospect that. And it turns into actual tangible things like the Florida Medicaid coverage being just completely struck from trans patients, which I'm not sure if that's gone through yet or not, but I think it's going to, if it hasn't already. But that is essentially making it illegal to be trans, obviously, because trans people who are kicked out of their homes can't get jobs because of their transness, are essentially denied the ability to transition how they want in a way that, you know, is authentic to them, because it's being used as a political wedge issue and as a way to instill fear into people, and it actually has tangible effects on people's fucking lives. It really does. I think this was one of the other things that kind of made me so sick to my stomach the other day, which is two self-proclaimed feminists. I suppose some people would call them TERFs, who are basically pro-feminist but anti-trans. So they're pro the idea that the idea of womanhood should be reserved towards a strictly biological understanding. I'm not sure how to, because there's always trips in that argument in terms of how you define who a valid woman is, in terms of, like, you know, they'll say, well, trans women can't reproduce. Well, some cis women can't reproduce. Trans women can't do this. Well, some cis women can't do this. You know, it's just whatever. But this scares me, if you haven't read this already. I mean, some of this is highlighted, but, you know, again, through these conversations that have happened lately, and I think these people have seen the Matt Walsh stuff, you know, she says to limit harm, for harm reduction, we need to keep down the number of people who transition. Every one of them is a huge problem to a sane world, which is crazy to me. Whether they're happily transitioned or not, every one of those people is someone who needs special accommodation, where we re-acknowledge the truth of sex. Every single one is a difficulty. I know that sounds heartless, but every single one of these people for 50, 60, 70 years is going to need things the rest of us just don't need. So the fewer those people there are, the better in the sane world that I hope we'll reach. Like, this is literally just advocating for eugenicist principles. The idea that we should deny care for trans people now to prevent more trans people in the future. Like, there's so many things wrong with that idea. One, the fact that trans people convert other people to transhood in the first place, but two, the literal genocidal mentality that, like, we should eliminate a group of people. Like, what the fuck? Because they're, you know, a problem to the world that I visualize or whatever, you know, it's just, it's messed up. So that's what's been on my mind lately. I'm afraid that the England stuff isn't going to go through. And of course the fear is, like, somewhat irrational. Like, hopefully it will go through. Like, I have a school working on things, like, whatever. But there's always a question of what if. What if something more happens? What if things prolong even more than I expect? What if I can't get there in time? Like, whatever happens, you know? I don't know if I can be in this country anymore. A lot of my motivation for leaving stemmed from wanting to see other parts of the world. But now it is about not being in this society for the sake of my own safety, which I recognize is probably a very privileged position to take, because there's many people who can't do the same thing. But I need to do this. So I'm hoping it works out. I'm hoping I can move to England. I've been having some great conversations with Matt, who, as many people know, I see as a father figure, who lives in England, and he was saying some nice things about how obviously England is moving in the much more different direction as the US on these types of things. So I really, really need to get there badly, and I hope I do. But in the meantime, you know, I'm still here. I'm still fearful of my life, of my safety. I don't know really what to expect. Kind of just every time I try and sleep have this sort of impending sense of doom and fear. So this has a lot to do with it. This idea that there's a good part of the population that wants me either converted or dead or injured or whatever. That's a terrifying thought at 5 a.m, and that's where I am now. So, you know, I imagine most people who watch me are cis. My ask for a lot of you all is to recognize that these issues exist, speak up on them, and you know, do your part to make sure people are aware, people are corrected. If you're surrounded by other people who are hateful, you know, either don't be or try and make them see something, because anti-trans hate is a bandwagon that people hop on because it's the hot pressing issue. It's an issue that is jumped on by a lot of young cis white guys who feel like, you know, the world is changing around them and they're not the most powerful social class. Since obviously there's many fights for equality that exist, but then those people lash out, you know, against people who are different from them. But yeah, as a cis person watching, I ask of, you know, being aware, speaking up, and just being an ally. That's all that's important, you know, during obviously Pride Month, but all the entire year for sure. So, it's late. I probably recorded this in a very tired voice. I apologize for that. Try and get to sleep. We'll see. But, I don't know. I appreciate you all for listening. Totally down to start some dialogue in the comments if you want to. And let me know if you want to see more of these. I know it's a little depressing and a little bit, you know, not very fun. But I hope that I offer perspectives and thoughts that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have had. And that could be important. And it's also a nice space for me to vent as well. So, yeah. All right, y'all. I'll see you all later.